All right, so I'm super excited just to even get this going. This is kind of a passion project of mine, starting this group and then just providing a bunch of resources. Obviously, most of you guys know I love all things nutrition, and I've been diving a little deeper into metabolism. Seems like it's kind of a buzzword these days. People are getting a lot more interested. I think part of it is that a lot of us are just feeling the effects of a metabolism that's not necessarily up to par. So my guess is if you're interested in this group, this training specifically, it's probably because you're experiencing like a less than stellar metabolism, or you want to find ways, right, to optimize it. So I'm all about that. So I'm really excited. Thanks for joining and being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I put together some slides for us. I'm very visual. There we go. Awesome. Okay. So I thought, to kick off our trainings, which my goal is to do at least 2 trainings a month, more if I have time, but at least 2 so that I can get some good information out there and just give you guys resources. So I thought, I think one of the best ways is just to kick this off with, how do we even just assess where our metabolism is? So we'll talk a little bit about what the metabolism is, because I think we'll probably need a little bit of a background in that, and then get into, how do we actually determine like whether our metabolism is working effectively or not. Now, like I had said, I think most people have a sense, but I want to give you some practical tools that you can kind of put into practice today, and then go from there. So let's talk very quickly about metabolism in general. So most people have this idea that metabolism is just about how many like calories we burn and the rate at which we like store fat, right? And does it do that? Absolutely. That's a very myopic look at metabolism, right? So number one, it's really a collection of processes. And the goal is to keep the body running. So it's not just one thing. It's not just calorie counting or burning, right? Yes, energy balance is part of what the metabolism does, but it's really to keep the body running, which is really an objective of the metabolism, to keep us alive. So survival is really number one, right? It's going to change. It's going to adapt based on that and that alone, survival, right? And then secondary is reproduction. So the body's super smart, right? If it senses that survival is threatened, it's going to shut down reproduction, right? Because if the body is threatened, right, then there's no need to go to actually sustaining another life, right? And so many times, not all, I'm not a doctor, I'm not diagnosing, but a lot of times we see reproduction issues tied to metabolism in terms of just stress on the body, right? And so last, we can think of our metabolism also as a stress meter. It's constantly assessing the stress that's on the body and then adapting, right? And why is it doing that adaptation? Well, for survival, right? And so maybe this gives a better and more broader look at our metabolism. It's not so much about calories, but it's about survival and then adaptation. And that's why we're still here after so many, many years, right? As a species, because our body is able to adapt, right? So it's really important that when we think of the metabolism, we think about it in terms of it's not breaking so much as it's adapting, right? And that's really key, especially in just allowing us to see the metabolism really for what it is, right? So it's really adapting. And what is it adapting to? Well, it's adapting to you, right? All the signals that you're sending, conscious or unconscious, right? And so I want, at the very least, for you to walk away with the idea that your metabolism as it is right now is just a reflection of the inputs that you're allowing on a consistent basis. Again, some of that is conscious, some of that is unconscious, right? So I'm hoping to unearth some of that unconscious stuff so you can be a lot more intentional about your metabolism in terms of the inputs that we have control over. And we don't have control over all of them, but we do have some control over some of it. So my question that I want you to be able to answer is, what signals are you sending to the body? That's important to grasp. if you want to take anything out of this. Okay, so let's talk about what the metabolism is actually affected by before we talk about assessing it, right? And like I said, some of the stuff we have control over and some we don't. Your age, right? As you age, your metabolism will change, right? That could be a whole other training. Maybe we'll do that a little later. Your gender, right? Women have a much more sensitive metabolism than men. Why? Because we have this ability, right, to actually carry life to fruition, right? And so therefore we are much more sensitive to stress, and why we see such a difference when it comes to, let's just say, weight loss between men and women. Your body composition, so how much muscle mass or muscle mass you don't have is going to impact your metabolism, your size as well, right? Bigger bodies will require more energy. Your genetics don't have a whole lot of control over that, but it's important to understand that we do. Your activity level, that is a lever we can pull in terms of your metabolism. Composition of your food, which is kind of interesting. I'll probably do a whole training over this as well. All I want to say here is that your food does have a thermic effect, meaning the body has to use energy to break it down. So you can see protein has the highest thermic effect, then carbs, then fat. This is why many people, including myself, will move people toward a higher protein intake during a diet phase, right? Because we can kind of leverage this thermic effect. Let's do a whole other training on that. It's totally fascinating. And then over there on the right, this is the biggest thing. Your metabolism is absolutely affected by stress, all kinds of stress, physical, mental, emotional. Your body cannot differentiate between any of that. It just senses stress and then it responds. And so, I mean, I can't even list all the ways that we stress ourselves out, but please just know all of that is being observed by the body and the metabolism. And then there's a response that's happening, right? As a nutrition coach, some of the biggest ways I see people, impact their metabolism in terms of stress is either under eating, on the other end, overeating, lack of sleep, and then overtraining. So those are things that just commonly I see that we have control over and that we can then affect the metabolism with. Okay, so that was a very brief overview of what the metabolism is, what it's affected by. So let's go into assessing our own metabolism. So there's a few ways, 3 specific ways that I want you to look at this in terms of your specific metabolism. So number 1 is we need to look at current biofeedback. So if you are a client of mine, we talk biofeedback all the time. Biofeedback is your hunger, your cravings, your energy, your mood, sleep, digestion, and stress, right? These are literal signals that your body is sending to you pretty much at all times. So the goal is to kind of tap into those signals and try to read them and then adjust our own behavior, right? Because we know the metabolism is going to adjust to us. We can also adjust to make sure that we do not send the wrong signal, right? So first signs that our metabolism is starting to kind of go wonky will look like this. Hunger is going to start to intensify. Energy starts to become unstable. These are like those dips we get, right? Or that fatigue we start to feel. Cravings start increasing. They can even start to become unrelenting. Mood starts to change, not for the better. Sleep starts to get disrupted. Digestion starts to get disordered, right? So these are first signs that something's wrong, right? That the body metabolism in particular is under duress, right? And so when I work with clients, we're going to first and foremost take care of biofeedback before I even allow a fat loss phase. Because if biofeedback is trending in the wrong direction, the body's not ready, right, for the stress of, let's say, a diet, right? So this is first and foremost. If anything, if nothing else that you take away is that you start to just tune into this biofeedback that you're getting on a daily basis, really, and use that to make better choices. Okay, second, then we're going to look for advanced signs and symptoms of metabolic stress. So if we allow biofeedback to head into a negative direction and we don't do anything about it, it's going to turn into these types of symptoms. So persistent fatigue, insomnia. This is where we plateau. We can't lose weight no matter how low our calories go. We're just unable to do that. We start having hair loss. For women, your cycle starts to get irregular. You might start skipping periods. PMS starts to really rise, right? Infertility, lowered libido. In the gym, you just don't feel like you can actually perform anymore. You're not hitting the same marks, I guess, as you were before. Temperature, you're a lot of the times just always feeling cold. And then your immune system can either go in either way. It can underperform where we are just sick all the time, or overperform where we see like autoimmune and allergies. So when we start to see these signs, we know that metabolic stress is definitely happening and we need to pull back the reins. Okay, so this is the second way that we would actually go ahead and assess where our metabolism is. The last way we're going to look at is assessing the calorie gap. So what's interesting about this is that it can go in two directions. We can see this happen when we undereat and our output is really high, or the opposite, when we overeat and our output is really low, right? So it's like the couch potato versus the overexerciser who undereats, right? They actually end up in the same place. And really, it's because this gap is very wide, and that gap is happening for such a long time that it's causing the metabolism to have to adapt to that stress, whether it's undereating or overeating, right? This registers as stress as your metabolism is trying to balance this out. The scientific term would be homeostasis. While it's trying to bring that back, this is when your biofeedback starts to decline, right? As it's trying to like make up for this disparity that's happening. You're going to start feeling hunger change, cravings, sleep, mood, digestion, all that stuff, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're overeating or undereating, you're going to experience it the same way. And really what it's just saying is like there's immense stress happening on the body there. So how do we actually assess that calorie gap? So that's the last piece that we'll kind of go over here. So you're going to want to do an estimate of your maintenance calories. And I really want to emphasize estimate because we don't know for sure. It's never going to be down to like the calorie, but we can certainly get an idea and we can get pretty close. So this is just an online calculator that I use personally. I can send, I'll post the link for it in our group. Most of them are going to look very similar to this, right? So it's just going to look at very basic information here, your age, gender, your height, and your weight, right? And it's going to give an estimate. So these are actually my stats here. So the BMR, that is really just how many calories you'd need to put into me if I were in a coma just to keep me functioning. So keep my heart, going, digestion going, breathing going, brain operating. I need about 12, almost like 1,300 calories. That's no activity, right? So this, you can already start to see why when we go really low, like a 1,200 calorie deficit or a diet, for most of us, that's barely keeping us alive. That's not even allowing for any activity, right? So now look at if you were to add my activity level in, right? If I were sedentary, it already bumps up to 1,500. Exercising 1 to 3 times a week up to 17, and you can see the progression there. Okay, now this is just an estimate and just a jumping off point. We don't want to get too bogged down in these numbers, but we want to get some idea of where we should be. Now, real quick, one of the things we said that affects your metabolism is your body composition. So as you are able to change that, meaning if you are able to put lean body mass or muscle on, these numbers start to go up quite a bit. So I actually know my maintenance is actually higher than what is listed here because I spent a lot of time putting some muscle on, right? So I work out like 3 to 4 times a week. According to this, my calories should be somewhere around 1,800, and it's actually a little over 2,000, right? And so you can just see why I love to pursue like strength training, especially for women, because it allows you to eat more, enjoy more, right? Without having to actually like diet more. So that's just my little plug for strength training, especially if you like to eat like I do. Okay, so let's just get a sense of like what are an estimate of your maintenance calories. We're not going to get too bogged down in those numbers. We just want a jumping off point. And then we're going to compare, right? So if you know how many calories you're currently eating, you're going to compare those numbers. Whatever that difference is your calorie gap. Okay. The wider that gap and the longer you've been there, the more stress it's on the metabolism. Right. And so what I can say here is like, this is why some people can eat very, very low calorie and not see any progress, because they've been in this gap for way too long. The metabolism is stressed out. And so it's down regulating, right? Remember, survival is the key. And it's the one thing it's its main objective, right? And so if not enough food is coming in, it's going to downregulate in order to keep you alive. And one of those ways it's going to do that is to stop fat loss, right? And so this is very common when I'm working with people, is that they're very confused as to how they could eat so little and not be losing weight. Well, they've just been in this stressful state for too long, right? We've got to send a different signal. Okay, for those of you who don't know how many calories you're eating, you'll have to do a little bit of detective work here to get that baseline, right? And so what you'll do is you just track for a week and don't change anything about the way that you're eating or drinking, right? You just do life the way that you do it. Weigh yourself at the beginning, at the end of the week. If there was no change, we know this is probably a really good estimate of where your current maintenance calories are. And I want to emphasize current, because it doesn't mean that it's a good maintenance. It just means where you currently are. Again, you would assess the gap, right? If your current maintenance is, let's say, 1,300 calories, but according to, let's say, the link I send you, it should be 17. That's a huge gap, right? That's 400 calories that's causing stress on the metabolism. And the longer we stay there, the more the adaptation goes in that negative direction. So it's really important to get this kind of baseline to just get some sense of like where you're even starting. Again, not to get too wrapped up in numbers, because that's not the important part. It's more to just see what that gap really is. So for those of you who are clients, this is exactly what we did when we got started, right? We tracked for a week, we got a baseline, and I got an idea of where your metabolism was. I did that assessment on you to kind of see what we're working with, right? And then we create a protocol to help optimize your metabolism specifically for you. So I want to leave you with the last thing is, what would you do then? Like, what are your next steps? If you're able to assess and you're like, wow, there is some metabolic stress happening. One, you're going to want to methodically close that calorie gap. That's number one, right? And so for the most part, for most of us, that means either methodically starting to eat a proper amount of food, or on the flip side, reducing food amount so that it is appropriate for us, right? Second, you're going to go ahead and monitor that biofeedback. Super easy. There's nothing you really need to do there, but just check in with yourself. How's hunger? What are your cravings like? What is sleep like? What's your mood like? What's digestion like? What's your stress like? Those are things that I think we just lose sight of. We're kind of a society that's very outside of our body, right? So kind of getting back into that and checking in with ourselves. Like, what is the body saying? What is the state of our stress, and then just the metabolism in general, right? Last, I encourage, if all that seems like a lot, or you just want, another set of eyes to kind of look and help you through that, work with a coach, right? This is where having somebody who knows how to do this, walk alongside you, is helpful in helping you get to a better place. So that's all I have for you guys. So I hope that was helpful in terms of kind of just getting a sense of what your metabolism is, how to assess it. And I hope I was able to give you just some practical steps for figuring that out for yourself. I'm always open for questions. So you can email me. I'm on Instagram quite a bit. You can also friend me on Facebook. And invite your friends into the group. We're going to continue to do these trainings. Like I said, I'd love to get at least 2 out a month, if not more, if I have the time. So yeah, I think I have trying to look over here. I think I have my comments open over here. Does anyone have questions before I let you guys go for the evening? Was it helpful? We definitely have a time delay here. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we've got any questions. So this was recorded. So if you missed any of it, I'll upload that hopefully tonight. If not tomorrow, it'll be in the group. Future trainings will all be uploaded as well. Again, I just want to create a bunch of resources for you guys. So thanks for coming. It means so much. I'm so excited to start this whole group, and I will see you guys soon. All right. See you guys. Have a good evening.